Okay, hi folks, Phil B-Man here. We're looking at the hives in the 4x4 trial today. What I want to do is look at each of the different treatments. I got control, Apivar, strip, Apilife, thymol, and a thymovar, these yellow tabs. And the theory is we're assessing for two things. One, we're taking a bee sample to see if the mite levels have changed in any of these hives since the last time we were here. We're also going to do a quick assessment on whether any of these treatments have impeded brood production. So I want to see which ones have eggs and larvae and which ones don't. So I've already been into this one a bit, and we even found the queen, which is a tricky thing to do this time of year. Where did she go now? The only thing worse than finding a queen once is finding it twice. She's jumped off, I guess. Anyway, there's brood, and there's larvae, and I even see eggs. So that's kind of the bar that we've got set here, is that this hive is continuing to brood up despite the cool weather and the dearth that they're in. Oh, there's lots of eggs here. Look at that. Bianca, come around and see if we can't get that on camera. Or actually, I think, let me hold that.
How can you tell if they're eggs?
Good question. We have a guest in the bee yard today. How do you know if they're eggs? You look down, I'm going to put this, no I can't. You just hold it right where it is. And now the sun's behind a cloud. But if I move these bees out of the way, and then I angle this just right there, you can see the little grains of rice in the bottom of the cells.
Yeah, I see one or two.
Yeah. Okay, so those are fresh eggs. A queen lays an egg. It's an egg for 3 days. Okay, thanks. You can take that now. So, but you can also see here that this probably was brood and it's hatched out, and the bees have filled it with nectar, or in this case sugar syrup. So this amount of brood in these hives is shrinking. These bees have a response to, they're very sensitive to their environment. When things are good, they'll build up their population. The minute resources get tight, they start to pull back and go into austerity mode. So, but I'm glad to see that we're still brooding here, because that means more young bees to get through winter. So I see 4 solid frames of brood in this hive. Right now I'll take a sample from that frame.
What do you do with the sample?
Okay, so we'll take the sample home and basically use a screen to separate the mites off. So we're testing to see if these bees have mites on their bodies. And so unfortunately it's a post-mortem type of analysis. So we'll go into about 5 hives for each of the different treatment strategies here. So we're going to have to do this 20 times. So now we've opened up the hives. It was these ones you guys opened up, right?
Yep.
Okay, so let's go find, if you hold that, we'll go find the next one.
Just right there.
This one must be a little smaller. It hasn't eaten its complete pollen patty yet. You don't hold that quite so much at the ready. It's going to take me a minute.
It's just the angle of my elbow.
Okay, as long as you're comfortable.
Yeah.
Okay. And you always have to work this first frame out very slowly and carefully. because there's a decent chance, although you don't want to mush any bees, you especially don't want to mush the queen. There's some drones in here yet. These large ones here. Now, that could be, at this stage, a bit of a sign of trouble. That they, because most of the hives will have essentially ejected or at least stopped feeding the drones. When I talk about bees going into austerity mode, one of the first things they do is get rid of the males. So King Charles, look out. But this one has brood. You can see the nice brown chocolate. So there's the bees are continuing to develop under those cappings. Have a look. I don't see any eggs on this one, but I see very young larvae. That's good. But this one is slightly weaker than some of the rest. There's eggs there. One, two. I'd say this is going to be a solid 4 as well for the frames with developing brood on it. Okay, take that. Okay. So these will be replaced once we're done sampling, and we'll close them up and then we'll do the next batch. Less brood in this one so far, anyway.
What does brood mean?
Brood like the young bees.
Oh.
Brood is like a general description of any young bees, and then like all insects, that breaks into eggs, larvae, pupae, adults. I do see eggs there. And you'd always want to avoid doing things in your hives that would interfere with their raising of brood, because that's, of course, that's your future, is having young bees in the hive. And these samples I'm collecting should be off of the part of the hive that has brood in it, because we believe that those mites preferentially hang around where there is brood. This hive has had a pail on it, but you never know it. It's hungry. some brood there, very nice.
So your experiment is to see which of the treatments the bees come back with the fewest mites from.
That's part of it. I'm wanting to measure effectiveness of the mite treatment, lack of negative side effects on the hives, and I find the most important thing for a beekeeper to measure within their own operation is sort of the long-term mortality. Is what I'm doing to these hives mean, you know, there's about 50 of them on this trial. If next year at this time, one whole suite, you know, whether it's the one batch is just completely missing, you go, well, whatever, I'm not doing that again, right? So that's a lot of scientific work is done on very short term. And I think that it's quite easy for me to measure just as part of my normal production, you know, how many of these cards come back in my pocket dead. I keep a box and count them as they come in. So then if suddenly I've got, you know, a full house, then that's not good. All right, and one more we'll measure and then we'll this hive didn't get a pail. I ran short the last time I was here, and there's significantly less feed in it. So I would say the other hives have been happy to store the feed they've been giving. Oh, and it's also a little grumpy. You might want to put your veil on. Okay, now we're gonna check the mites or take a sample on the ones, the Apolife VAR. So I'm just having a quick look on this to see what the brood situation is. There's some there. Oh, there's a nice patch there. Most of it's emerging. You can tell, see how on some of these cells it's almost a little bit ragged around the circle? That's one that's just chewed its way out.
Oh, cool.
So when you see lots of brood that looks like that around the edges, that's where it's hatching. And so you can kind of tell, right, because the queen will lay her eggs, like she doesn't just randomly do it, she follows the path of least resistance. So if this one just hatched, the one next to it's probably pretty close. So that's kind of one way to tell how old your brood really is. So I would say there's less older brood. Shake that off a bit and see better. In this one, but there is young, I see eggs in this area here.
So are these ones rough around the edges, or are those?
That one is there, yeah. So these are hatching out, and the bees are continuing to replace at least some of the ones that hatch with a new egg, so that you know, the whole thing carries on. I'll take a sample. Somewhat counterintuitively, you take the sample running down, not trying to scrape the bees up. They don't fall in very happily that way, but they do trickle in nicely. So you just kind of trip them up and they fall in. And you can hold that. Okay, we'll do at least 4 more. Oh, we didn't open them up yet. So what? Okay, we jumped again. Diamonds.
This one right here.
Good.
I'll just put the other one in this one.
So it looks like there's a lot of product left there. It's only got a very faint odor left. I'm still looking for brood here. I'm not finding much. Oh, I see eggs there. I bet you there's a patch of brood on the next one. Not really. So this one's had very little brood in the last 20 days. And suddenly they're all hepped up about raising eggs. Oh, here's our queen. Right there. A bit of a stripy one. Let's put you in there, and then we'll take a sample from here. So I don't know if that one superseded. It is from a batch of queens that have been doing that. Okay. Smaller hive, this one. Good. Lots of larvae, lots of eggs. Here's our queen. She's marked. We just put her in the safety zone there. Lots of brood on this one. I bet that's a pretty big hive. I wonder how far it goes across. Yeah, basically the same. These all like to have about 3 frames of brood. Which is interesting because I'm all worried about my new splits that only have 3 frames of brood. And it turns out all these boomers, that's what they have. So it probably is going to work out just fine. One more. I bet there's something wrong with this one. Let's not do that one.
Does that have any of those?
The queen has failed on that one. They haven't touched the pollen. We'll have to take that out of the trial. The consumption of this protein is a pretty good indicator of how things are going on in the hive. That's a brood there. Very nice. Okay, I think that's enough of a sample. So now we'll close these up. You can lid up that sample jar. So these come in packs that, I don't know, we've started calling them cookies, but I just cut one end of the pack off, and there's 2 biscuits in there, 1 biscuit per hive, and I just let it half come out and break it off. Let the other half come out. And I'll leave the old product in there. The bees seem to throw it out when it's empty, so why bother doing that myself? And this one, the hive is completely used up the old stuff. And then, so it's a ton of waste. I wish, when I first started using these, I thought, why didn't they package them? But when they're quite brittle. You can see how they broke. So you wouldn't want to handle them dozens at a time, probably. We'll think about that one. Okay, we'll close those up and give them a feed pail, and then we'll go back and take samples from the controls and the apivar hives. Okay, we got our veil on, and we're going to try this again. I see brood. Nice. Okay. Now we're going to replace those with, this product doesn't last long enough to give a full 21-day treatment window like the brood. The mites parasitize the bees in the cell. So while they're hiding in the brood, you can't really treat them. So you want to catch them as they emerge. So you need exposure within the hive for at least one full generation. So that's why we have to renew them. Now we take these, come like that, and you got to cut them in half. I just use a pair of scissors and fit them in somewhere not right over where the brood's going to be, is the instruction. And we'll close them up, put the feed pail back on, and we'll do all of the hives of that type, or that trial, before we do the rest. So yeah, somehow there's an extra blanket, I don't know where that came from. So I'll go along and put these in, and you guys can come along and close them up.
Okay.
This is the end of the video.
I don't want to keep rolling. Let me do a few more.
Okay.
Okay, you can stop. Okay, now we're going to sample the hives that have the apivar strips. So this is a synthetic pesticide, specifically a miticide. If I was smart, I'd remember the active ingredient, Amitraz. I think it is. I think it's a Bayer product, but
So if one of these works better than the black biscuits, would you switch to using them?
well, so here's the thing. These work better. But if you use just the best product all the time, you're essentially running evolution at fast forward. And you're killing off 99% of the mites every time. The 1% that survive are going to turn into super mites. So you have to rotate. Every farm, doesn't matter if you're growing crops or, I think to some extent livestock vaccinations and so on, you do have to have a plan that to prevent the development of resistance.
Okay, interesting.
So I kind of see this as kind of the nuclear option, and I'm not afraid to use it, but I would like to be in a position where I've got the mites kind of beat down enough that I can use some of the less drastic options more regularly. That's my goal. Now, full disclosure, I used these mite strips spring of 2020. No, let me get this straight. I used them last fall. That was fall of 2021, spring of 2021, spring of 2020. Yes. So three times in 2 years. So to me, that's unwise, but desperate times called for desperate measures. But right now, my mite levels are at a fairly low level. So I am on all the colonies we worked in this morning already. We used a softer, it's still an effective option, but not as dramatically effective. Okay, let's take our sample here. I'm not seeing a whole ton of brood in this hive at all. There's some here. Oh, seems like a good enough colony, but it's down to a single sheet of brood. And I've worried that those strips do impede brood rearing a little bit, but I've never gathered enough data to confirm that. Honestly, this time of year, you spend, unless you force yourself, you don't get into the hives in this way very much. Everything's cold, the wax isn't, like this is hard work getting into these compared to in July when everything's warm and the bees are happy and foraging. So it's pretty common practice that if you, especially in the fall, you put the strips in and kind of walk away. You're not really sure what's going on. Okay, so that's the first one.
And we'll go ahead and put the...
Yeah, you can put the pail on that if you want. Nice patch of brood there. There's brood here too. Oh, and here's our queen. This one's got a, oh, she's sticking her head in the cells. If we watch her, she's got the yellow dot on her there. And she is still looking for places to lay. She'll walk around, and when she thinks she finds a prospective spot, she'll stick her head in the hole to check that it's all clean and ready for her. We might have disrupted her enough now that she won't. But.
I was expecting her to be bigger. She's quite slim.
Well, I think a lot of people, when they hear that beekeepers find the queen just by the fact that she's different sized, they must think that it's, you know, a significant difference. One of the challenges is that it's only a little bit different. Yeah, as you can see her, she's sticking her head in those cells, looking for one that's just ready to go. So now I don't know if when the queen stops laying eggs, if it's because she doesn't want to anymore, or if because the hive isn't preparing the cells for her to lay eggs into. She's not having much luck. She's putting her head in those holes.
And what's she looking for exactly?
She's looking for a cell that's kind of polished. The bees, the old bee is hatched out, and it's completely empty. There's nothing, no debris or any existing egg or larvae. Right? She'll so when it's perfectly ready, then she'll lay an egg in it. And the rest of the time, she's as she drags her abdomen around, she's also using this pheromones on her body to mark where she wants to be laying eggs. And the bees respond to that by polishing or cleaning up the cells that she's working on. So it's a two-way information system. Okay, so we won't take the sample off of that one since the queen is on here. that up and feed it. This looks like quite a strong one, but that could just be an illusion based on the amount of burr foam they've made up on top. I just gotta do a little housekeeping here.
Do they? So usually they do that when they're out of space.
I don't know if they were running out of space, but they decided to. Some hives build a lot more burr comb than others. The blanket must have been sitting up high for whatever reason, and so they created space. That makes great smoker food, by the way. Pro tip if you're not too much, but just a little bit in there to keep it burning. So, you don't see any eggs are doing this at all. Just a shade of it here. One more, right? And we're going to do the control hives last. It'll be interesting to see if we see the same amount of brood in those when we sample them. Or if they're packed to the walls, then we know that all of these products are interfering with that brooding. Which I don't think is the case. I think it's well understood that these bees will be cutting back on their brood as a response to the scarcity of resources. When there's lots of brood in the hive, they have to maintain a much higher temperature. And so they'll be burning through the honey and also their lifespan much more quickly. There's some brood there. Yeah, that's a beauty. There's all kinds of brood in this one.
Based on your experience, which thing would you expect the best hives?
Which treatment?
Yeah, which treatment would you expect to get the best hives with?
So the Thymovar, and I've only used a couple times, and always in the spring. I had decent results with that. The Apple Life VAR, or VAR, I don't know how you're supposed to pronounce it, is a new product, so I have no prior experience with that. These strips, I've had very good results in the spring, hit and miss in the fall. So I'm not prepared to put a whole lot of money on any of them. Except I'm gambling my whole life's worth on keeping the bees alive. Right? But I'm not too worried because I do have, in fact, the people watching are probably thinking, what's the big deal? Because the first bunch of samples we took out of these hives didn't find any mites. So who knows? But okay, so that's done. Now we just sample the controls. It's way back to the beginning. You don't ever want to have the lid off more than one at a time where you mess up which one is which. Okay, control. This is no treatment. And we're hoping to see basically the same hives. That there's, some nice little patches of brood, but nothing substantially different because these things are brooding up like crazy. That means that all of those products are holding them back. I don't think that's the case. Now, if we were highly paid scientists, we'd have kind of a scoring system where you would evaluate each hive, amount of brood, population, whatever, and you can actually lay out like grids and count how many grids have brood in them as a way of much more accurately measuring that than me just going, oh, there's lots of brood. But there's one frame there. Let's just count. 2. That's as good as we see. I'll shake it off. You can see a bit better what I'm looking at. Well, you can see them hatching out here. Remember I told you they chew their way out? That one is chewing her way out right now.
Wow.
So she actually just crawls around, goes around in a circle and kind of corkscrews her way out, just like opening a can of beans. You just peel the lid off. And then she tries to get out and she can't, so I'll chew a little more. Try again.
Will she be about the same size as the others?
They come out fully grown. Yeah, like all of their body growth is in their pre-adult stages.
Oh. How long does the bee live for? in ideal circumstances?
So the queens can live multiple years. I've seen them as much as 5 years, but that's pretty rare. You're probably too young to remember Indiana Jones.
I know.
You know Indiana Jones? Okay, so what does he say? He says, it's not the years, it's the mileage, right?
Well, I'm not that familiar.
Oh,
with
okay.
Indiana
Well, if you're a middle-aged guy, you take a lot of comfort in that.
Jones. Uh-huh.
So he says, not the years, it's the mileage. The bees that are born now will live well into next spring. The bees that are born that were born in this spring are all gone.
Okay, so they're one season kind of.
Yeah, because as the harder they work, the shorter their lifespan is. So when they're foraging for 18 hours a day in our long summer, they don't last very long. And so the queen, because she doesn't fly and her metabolism works pretty hard, but most of them are actually die after their wing muscles wear down to the point where they can't get back to the hive anymore.
Wow.
Okay, you can close that up. Hold on. What am I looking for here? Oh. So basically everything that doesn't have a tail, right?
Yeah, there are some with no card. I don't know what that means.
This one has a heart. It didn't get a tail back. Probably because it had this stuff on it. So I'm not seeing any difference in amount of brood. This one's got a pretty nice patch here, but so did some of the others. Like on this next frame, I can see it looking down here. And actually the next one, I wasn't too impressed with this hive when I first opened it up, but it actually has got pretty nice brood.
This one that's stacked too high is fine.
We'll skip that one, I think.
What's the liquid inside this?
That is windshield washer antifreeze, and it's basically soapy alcohol and water, and it's very effective insecticide. Pardon me? I think so. Probably if I was to come back and sample these again at the end of the treatment period, I'd probably have a real hard time finding any brood at all. Then I guess you just sample randomly. You'd probably get, I don't know if it would affect the results or not. Oh, there's another queen. This one's tagged white. I think that means she's a last year's queen. Yeah.
So you added that, Mark?
The person who provided the queen. I don't think I marked any last year. It does make them a little easier to find, especially in a crowd. Nope, another queen. Oh, she was laying an egg just as I pulled her out. She was there. Well, good luck to her. And you got one more open there somewhere? Lots of brood there too. I don't know if I think we could probably put those fears to rest. These will do what they think is best. Okay, that's the science part of today's job done. Now we just got to put all the rest of the pails on and feed them, and we're good. Thanks a lot, everyone, and I'll shake these samples later and give you the results.